Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And we've been talking about it for seemingly a month and a half now, but it's finally time for the long-awaited Aggieville Alleycats football preview for the 2026 football season. And, this is always one of our favorite episodes to do every year just because there's so much hope, there's so much optimism going into every season. And, for the most part, the hope and optimism, at some point it goes away, but hopefully it doesn't have opportunity to do that this year. But this year is especially exciting just because new head coach, that is a K-State legend, a lot of returning pieces with a lot of really exciting new pieces as well. So really exciting season, and going to be a lot of fun to talk about just everything top to bottom. But for the format of this episode, we'll be going through each of the position groups before talking about the expectations of the season on the whole. So it's a somewhat similar format to how we used to do, like towards the first year or so of the show, how we used to go through position by position group of each team that we faced on a weekly basis. And then I started going to law school. So that became not feasible anymore. But yeah, so Connor, before we get into position by position, I'm guessing you're just as excited as I am, but if you had to pick one thing to say that you are the most excited about, what would you say it is?
Well, I said this on Bosco's Boys, and so I'll say it again here, which I don't think that episode's out yet. So like you can't fact check me on it yet, but wait a week. I said I'm mostly, or I shouldn't say mostly, but I'm most interested in and excited for what we can expect from competitiveness and body language perspective, because right or wrong, that was, I think, a pretty big perception problem with the team last year, was that at times there were players that fans felt, and oftentimes I think they were on the right track, that there were players that didn't seem as locked in as they needed to be, or players taking plays off. I'm thinking, if nothing else, I think Klein is not going to accept that. And so I'm hoping that we can see a team that really is playing with its hair on fire constantly, and not just intermittently, because we definitely saw some very motivated Chris Kleiman teams and some teams that really flew around the field. But we also saw some Chris Kleiman teams where if the season wasn't going great, then things really kind of seemed to snowball for players that didn't already have that in them. So I'm really interested to see that side of things, especially early in the season.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to agree. That I remember also saying on Bosco's Boys that I'm excited just for the vibes to be back, and I will leave the rest of that to the Bosco's Boys Blitz Month episode, which will probably come out the week after this episode comes out, since we're releasing this on Friday. But now we can start with the quarterback room, which everyone considers to be the most important, because really it is the most important position on the field in football. And the discourse around Avery Johnson this year, to me, has been fascinating. And I think it is a little bit of a residual from the previous season as well, where there were a lot of critics of Avery Johnson last year. And I'm not going to say that a lot of the criticisms of him were unfair. I do think there were some that were unfair, and I think that some people want borderline perfection from a college quarterback, and that's just quite simply not going to happen. In fact, it's happened basically once, and that was the Joe Burrow season. I am of the genuine belief that we will never see a season like that again. But a lot of people sort of wrote off, and I'm not saying this is everyone in the K-State fan base, but Avery Johnson has come under a lot of different expectations where one game, like basically the first game last year, he was entitled as the savior of K-State athletics, as if they'd been god awful for so long. And now this year, he's like everyone's just kind of like, he's okay, or Avery Johnson is a bottom half of the Big 12 quarterback. And I don't think either perspective is correct. So I am excited to see what Avery Johnson does. Shout out to The Athletic, by the way, for calling Avery Johnson a geezer, despite the fact that he's not even the oldest quarterback in the conference. But but my expectations for Avery Johnson are to just build upon basically sophomore year Avery Johnson. Last year, he got caught up in a very stubborn play caller with Matt Wells, who was basically slamming his head up against the wall for most of the season. But now he's back with someone who he is very comfortable with, who's proven has a track record with dual threat quarterbacks. So that was a lot of words. Connor, what are your thoughts on the Avery Johnson discourse, and what are your expectations for Avery this year?
Yeah, I think it's fair to be disappointed with Avery because I think the two things can be true at the same time, or maybe in a few things. One of them is that there were very high expectations for Avery Johnson when he committed to K-State. And his freshman year, I think, also kind of played into that as well because he did have while only starting in the bowl game, he played a decent amount and he had some really strong performances that season. So I think there was reason to be optimistic. And if you look back at his 24 season, he definitely had a couple games that we would have liked to see better from him and just the offense as a whole. But really, for a true sophomore starting quarterback, I thought that he played pretty well. But yeah, last year it was a step backwards. But like you said, I think a lot of that is on other parts of the game. Now, that's not to say that there's no blame on him, because I think that there's plenty of blame to put on him. I think at times he really just did not play well. And, even if he's being coached to not scramble as much, shying away from contact, I get it, but that was very frustrating, especially when it was in critical situations, right at a first down marker. So there's plenty of valid reasons for frustration with Avery. And I don't blame people for being frustrated with him, especially given the expectations. But with all that being said, I do think that there was a lot more going on last year offensively than Avery could have ever hoped to fix. I think that putting all of last season's struggles on him isn't really a fair picture of it. And that's not me saying, we have to be nice to college athletes. I get they're basically professionals now. It's more of I just don't think it's the right perspective. I don't think it's a complete view of the situation. Obviously, yeah, he had some bad throws, made some bad choices, and was a little conservative in the running game at times. But at the same time, we think back to last year, a lot of people's primary frustrations were going to be with Matt Wells' play calling at times and the offensive line play for most of the season.
And the receivers all dying.
Yes, as well. That was a huge problem too. I mean, Jaron Bradley going down in week 2 and really not being available for majority of the season after that. I mean, here and there, but never significantly. And then Jace going down as well. Tron Tibbs was really the only guy that was there and available all season. And he's back this year. But I mean, we were giving significant run to Adonis Moise and Sterling Lockett by the end of the year. So that was a receiver room in rough shape. And Garrett Oakley, who I love and is one of my favorite athletes the last few years for K-State, he had a big drop problem last year. And it kind of with Avery's interceptions, I think it was made even worse by a lot of them being timely. drops or like with Avery's picks, he threw some timely, in a bad way, interceptions that really just stung. But long story short, uh, yeah, I think the narrative on Avery has shifted from probably too positive to way too far in the opposite direction.
And I do think that there is going to be some irony here, especially with me pointing that out, very simply because I was someone who, at times, while acknowledging that Matt Wells had some bad play calls, there were a lot of times that I did kind of put the onus on Avery on being too conservative or taking the wrong route on a particular concept. That does not absolve Matt Wells of what he did, because there were a lot of those times they were in bad situations. Avery was put in a bad situation by Matt Wells. And then Wells gave a play call to give him at least a chance to bail it out. But at that point, like, you can't trust one another. So like, it doesn't matter anymore. So what are your I think the expectations for Avery will vary wildly depend on who you talk to. If you had to pick a year of Avery, which one do you think is the most representative sample of him as a player? Like, are we going to see more of the freshman year play free Avery, the sophomore consistency Avery, or the junior year Avery Johnson that was a little too conservative at times, but still had his bright spots?
I really think this year it's probably going to end up. Well, you said to pick a single year, so I think we're going to see a lot of sophomore year Avery this year. Um, I don't think I don't think he's going to run quite as much as he did as a freshman. I think the reason he ran so much as a freshman was because he was the backup quarterback, really, and like was brought in for that specifically. Sophomore year, like he was the starting QB, and like obviously we want him to run a lot more, but he doesn't really have the running style that lends itself to being a battering ram, and he definitely doesn't have the body type, I think, either for it. Like that's just not going to be his game, and I don't think it'll be the most effective offense that we can run with Avery because like in terms of like pure effectiveness, like Colin Klein senior year, he was a good passer, but he really was never like a natural passer. Like his throwing motion is like
It's
famously
disgusting.
janky.
Yeah,
Like,
it's disgusting. It's gross.
yeah. So Avery's definitely got a lot more of a natural throwing motion and like more natural passing instincts. So I think there's more to build with there, and that's why I tend to be towards his sophomore season with a consistent approach. Especially with Colin Klein calling the offense as well. I think that's going to be a big benefit for you.
Yeah. And I don't feel the need to talk about the other quarterbacks, because if we are in a situation where the other quarterbacks are getting significant run, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. Though I guess if I was to pick a backup this year, Barnett, I guess, if it has to be for long term. Duff might get some run in like blowout situations just so he can get in-game action. But I think if push came to shove, let's not have that happen. But I think Blake would be the long-term backup. And I think you would see a lot of the QB run game in that regard. But I'll let you get your thoughts in, but I kind of don't want to think about it.
Yeah, no, I'm very curious if we have a blowout in the first game. If that happens, I'm very curious who would be first quarterback off the bench. Because, I mean, there's a compelling argument for all of them. I mean, Jacob Knuth is like a very experienced team guy. And he he is going to be at least a steady guy that you can rely on to like know the offense. But I also know maybe in a blowout, you might prefer to get one of the younger guys a little run even though maybe Knuth, it being his last go around and he's not going to play pro ball. So maybe that's a look you give. But between Barnett and Duff, I know there's been a lot of hype around Dylan Duff, or like he's gotten a bit of buzz in the off season. I'm still kind of in wait and see mode on Duff. I'm curious if they can get something out of him, but I'm really not sure who between Barnett and Duff is first, because Duff's got a whole year under his belt now. He's a redshirt freshman. I mean, not that really matters anymore, but then Blake Barnett, he got a bit of playing time last year, but really never. I guess the question that you have to ask with Blake Barnett is, did he not have the tools to ever do anything more than he did, or did he never get a fair shot to do anything more? That
Blake Barnett in a Matt Wells offense is perhaps one of the worst scheme fit to quarterback relationships I've ever seen.
Yeah, just endlessly running him without the counter punch. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop with the counter punch for Blake Barnett, and it never came. And most offenses, I would just kind of take that as an indicator that he just can't pass, and that may be true. But given just the struggles we had last season, I'm gonna also go out on a limb and say that maybe we weren't using him to the best of his ability. Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not, but I'm curious.
Yeah, but the next room is a much more interesting room because there are a lot of really good options in this room, and this is the running back room. Now, I think it is going to be led by Joe Jackson and Rodney Fields, and that 1-2 punch is already ridiculous because I think Joe Jackson, I'm so happy he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves, because he was underrated for such a long time. And granted, that's because he didn't get a whole lot of playing time, and he did have a slow start last year. But I think that the Utah game caught a lot of people's attention and could show what Joe Jackson could do and what he truly is as a player. And then the Colorado game was really good for him as well. And there's an argument he's not the best running back on the roster because Rodney Fields is sitting right there, who was the only conscious piece of an Oklahoma State offense last year. And you also have complementary pieces like Jay Harris, who's transferring in from Oregon, who probably gets some run. I am interested to see if Money Elston gets any kind of role because he has put on a lot of weight. He's up to 191 now on the roster at 5'7", which that's actually a pretty stout build for a running back. But the main two are definitely going to be Rodney Fields and Joe Jackson. That's almost certainly a 1A, 1B scenario, and they're going to swap. It might be matchup dependent, honestly, or scheme dependent. Rodney Fields will come in a lot more on zone runs, and Joe Jackson will come in a lot more on gap runs where you just need one step and go. But both are capable receivers. I think Joe Jackson is a better receiver, but there is a world where neither of them gets to 1,000 rushing yards, but both of them end up with 700-800, and maybe both get to 1,000 all purpose.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the split at running back because I'm really high on Joe Jackson and Rodney Fields. I picked Joe Jackson as my not Avery offensive MVP, and I picked Rodney Fields as my offensive newcomer of the year. I think both of those guys are going to get a fair shot to take the number one job. And I really kind of am hoping that we're going to see a lot of both of them throughout the season. I think Joe Jackson, like you said, I think both of them can get to 1,000 total yards. It won't be easy, but I think especially given that there's question marks on how deep the receiver room goes, I could definitely see where Joe Jackson can get there with 850, 900 rushing, and then 100 to 150 receiving. And Rodney Fields, I think, could get there with a bigger split. I think maybe 700 rushing and then 300 receiving, because Fields is a guy I think that could potentially use more as a third down back, at least that sort of archetype. Where he's going to be able to check and release, and he's going to be able to be a solid receiver. And Joe Jackson can also do that. That's like for sure. We've seen him catch the ball, but I think Fields is going to be even more dynamic in that role. Then Jay Harris, I think he should be solid as a power back. I'll be curious to see the split on the carries too between all of those guys, because I know Jay Harris in the offseason, especially in the spring, he was getting a ton of buzz, and I'm curious if that's going to be the same here as we approach the season, because he seemed to be kind of like a winter workout like warrior, like in that sense. But I don't know if it'll be enough to usurp Joe Jackson and Rodney Fields, but I think he could do enough to get at least like a couple of carries a game.
I see him kind of in like that Joe Irvin role when it was the Deuce season. Let's be honest with each other. I could kind of see Jake Harris in that Joe Irvin. I mean, worst case scenario, Jacardier Wright pre Oklahoma fumble where we never saw him again, and then he ended up carving out a decent career at Missouri State. I really wish that we kept Jacardier, but granted, he would have been buried for the rest of his career because then he would have been behind DJ. But Money Elston, I think, is probably going to be like someone who's in on like kickoff returns, maybe punt returns. We'll see. He's definitely a smaller, more slight back, might be a better receiving option. Who we'll see him a few times this year. I just don't know if he'll get like a lot of featured run. But now we can talk about everyone's favorite room when it comes to every K-State season, and that is the wide receivers, where every single time there's been any degree of hype around the receivers, it immediately blows up in our face. But this year, at least the top three has some degree of proven production. Dron Tibbs, Josh Manning, and Brandon White, I think, are probably the top three. Isaiah Williams, 4, and then everyone else just kind of fighting for what they can do. Max Lovett, I think he could play if he had to. I just don't think he will have to this year. Adonis Moise, probably the same way. Larry Porter IV. God, I want to see him play, but with how little Colin Klein rotates receivers, I just don't see that happening. Same with Derek Salley. But I think we have to start with the person who every single podcast episode or every single interview that you hear about, who's the most hyped up player on this offense this year? Every answer, every time has been Brandon White, who's transferring in from Hawaii. People have called him, including Avery, including his head coach, have called him impossible to cover. And forgive me for not wanting to be burnt by this again, but maybe wearing Phillip Brooks's number will give him the power to be a serviceable 5'7" receiver. I think Brandon White will probably be better than Phillip Brooks. And this is someone who doesn't hate Phillip Brooks like some people do. I did not know that there was such a vocal community of Phillip Brooks haters in the world. I did not know that. But I think it pretty well sorts out to where Dron Tibbs is your true number one receiver, Brandon White is your gadget guy, and Josh Manning is your number 2. Everyone else, fight for scraps, basically.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right answer. Like, Dron Tibbs is the clear number one guy, at least going into the year, and like I think it would take like something crazy to displace him. Then Josh Manning is going to probably be right there, and then your Isaiah Williams and your Brandon White, I think, are your next most likely options. And the Brandon White chatter has been really interesting because he didn't really produce at Kentucky or Hawaii. And I know Hawaii, I think they ran the ball a lot, so some of that is offense. But so maybe this is going to be something where we can find a way to work him in and are able to carve out a better role for him than he was able to get elsewhere. So I'm hoping that that's something's going on.
Point of correction. Hawaii is a very heavy passing offense, but they pass it to everyone. Like, they do not have a number one receiver. They throw it to everyone.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's more a point guard situation.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I think I must have misheard that on another show, because I heard that earlier this week. So yeah, I just was misremembering that then. But yeah, I'm looking for Brandon White and Isaiah Williams. Larry Porter, I think, of those kind of fringe guys you mentioned, is the most likely to break through. Adonis Moise played a lot last year, but he really didn't get thrown to very much. And I think he's going to kind of always find himself in that space. Larry Porter, I think this probably won't be his breakthrough year, but I still think that the arrow or the ceiling for him is a lot higher. And then Max Lovett is someone that could get a shot. But again, like you said, Colin Klein really doesn't rotate at receiver very much. It's like one of the only things in his offense that like I kind of wish that he did a little more. But like, there's nothing wrong with not rotating receivers. I personally like seeing it because I like seeing a lot of receivers get a chance. But it's not a wrong approach. It's not what I do in the college football games. So it must be wrong.
True. But receivers, I just think is interesting because there are people that I've heard this pointed out on a few different shows, the KSO show, Bosco's Boys. I'm not sure Cocaine Willie has had an official stance on this, but there seems to be a general belief that the receiver room is not only not as good as last year's, but it doesn't have depth like last year's. To which, were we looking at the same team? We were down to Isaac Koch getting significant snaps last year. That's not going to happen this year. I agree. We don't have a Jace Brown on this roster. Okay, we do. His name is Max Lovett. But I don't think he'll have to play early like Jace did because we have other good receiving options. Like last year, we were always one receiver injury away from disaster, and then we had three at the same time. This year, I think this is a room that could theoretically sustain one or two receiver injuries. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not a traditionally deep receiver room. Like if more than two people are injured at a time, we're in very, very big trouble. Very similar to last year. But unlike last year, if there's one injury, I don't feel like we're having to trot out basically a warm body or a true freshman playing out of position.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. First, I really hope we don't see Isaac Cook much this year because
I keep mispronouncing his name.
Yeah, I mean it's fair because I mean that's just not how those letters are supposed to sound. But
you're pronouncing him like the gun manufacturer.
Yeah, I really hope we don't have to see much of him. On no disrespect, and honestly, the same probably goes for Sterling Lockett. But I think, obviously not having a Jace Brown like that just like immensely lowers the potential ceiling of this receiver room. But I'm also sitting here thinking back to last year, and I'm like, we really had like three like decent receivers last year, but like Jaron Bradley was always kind of a projection coming into the season. It was a reasonable one because he had good seasons in the past. But he just got injured, but still like made a few plays. Then Jerron Tibbs was a projection that actually worked out. And then Jace Brown was expected to be great, and he was when he was healthy and focused. This year, I mean, we're expecting Jerron Tibbs to improve on last season. We're expecting Josh Manning to produce a little more in an offense that isn't so run dominant like Missouri. And then we're hoping that either Isaiah Williams, Brandon White, Adonis Moise, Larry Porter, or Max Lovett can be decent. And I think if you're a gambling man, like there's a pretty good shot that at least 1 out of 5 receivers will be playable. And I think Isaiah Williams is going to be playable because he played last season at Texas A&M sparingly, but he was able to get on the field for what was a good offense. So I think he should be able to get on the field here. There's been a lot of chatter about Brandon White. He's kind of a wild card still at this point. But then, like some young guys like Larry Porter and Max Lovett, like you hope that you can maybe catch lightning in a bottle there, and maybe later in the season, especially, maybe get a couple snaps out of them here and there. But yeah, I think it's fair to be worried about the lack of experience depth, but I think that we're probably going to have to get used to that being the situation in the receiver room. If we aren't already used to it, we never will be, because frankly, I don't see this receiver room being that different than most of the Klein years. So I think that there's just as much reason for concern and just as much reason for positivity and upside. So I'm still hopeful on this receiver room. I don't think they're gonna have an absolutely all-American season, but then we can expect them to be solid.
Yeah. Another room that I actually expect a lot from is the tight end room, and it's mostly going to be on the backs of Garrett Oakley and Lincoln Cure. This is no disrespect to Will Ancio. Someone at EA hates Will Ancio. I don't know what he did to be hated so bad by people at EA, like ratings adjusters at EA, but they left him out of the game last year, and this year he's like a 66 overall below a long snapper who they put at tight end and a randomly generated player. So that is horrendously disrespectful to him, but it really is the Garrett Oakley as your true tight end and Lincoln Cure as your more flex tight end show, with Will Ancio going to be showing up in rotation. I do think if I had to pick a tight end of the year for the Big 12, it would almost certainly be Garrett Oakley. I don't think anyone else. I think that the favorite in the room should be Garrett Oakley just by body of work. Yes, he does need to calm down on the drops, but maybe you can attribute that to someone who is horrendously underqualified being his coach last year, and now he gets the coach that actually kind of molded him into a good tight end back. And honestly, I think that's another quietly important part is Brian LePack getting an opportunity to coach Lincoln Cure after the development of Garrett Oakley. That's another really exciting point. But I mean, Garrett Oakley is going to be the reliable option. He's going to be the one that Avery trusts the most because he's been the one that Avery's trusted the most, even when Jace was there. So I expect a lot from this tight end room, and it'll be helpful that Lincoln Cure doesn't have to play wide receiver. He could, don't misunderstand. I think he's capable. That's just not his natural position.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Titans as well. Yeah, Will Ancio definitely had a rough season last year. He just didn't get the targets the same way in the red zone, and also had some rough drops at times as well. Production was down significantly, but I think he's primed for kind of a bounce back season. Garrett Oakley, I think, is the same way because, last year he had some concentration drops. But really, that was a problem across the entire tight end room. There was a lot of drop issues last year. They didn't block well at all either. But I'm really hoping that, Brian LePack getting back to that room is going to help. But I think, the guy to watch is probably going to be Lincoln Cure because we already know that Garrett Oakley can produce. It's going to be cleaning up the mistakes for him. But Lincoln Cure, I think everybody's really wanting to see a breakout season for him. And I think he might be the most likely player on the team to have a breakout season, at least for those who haven't produced yet, because he really didn't do anything. He really didn't do anything last year. I mean,
threw an interception.
Well, yeah, I guess he did do that, but East, that wasn't really what I meant.
I know. He recorded an interception before Blake Barnett recorded a pass.
Yeah, and that was Lincoln Cure's first stat that he recorded too. He like that's going to be a good trivia question down the road. So, if you ever get that right in bar trivia, just remember where you heard it from. Lincoln Cure's first recorded statistic: throwing an interception.
And I think the twin question is I think Andrew Langang recorded the first reception of the
I was
year.
going to actually bring this up to you, and it's not him; it's Terrence Enos.
It's Terrence Enos. Okay, I knew it was the right side of the line.
It was yeah, the right tackle, but it was Terrence Enos on that series. And I was just thinking about it the other day. I meant to text you about it, but I was going to bring it up on here. But it's going to be that one's going to be especially hard because like no one's going to remember who Terrence Enos was.
No.
Like, and I mean, most people don't even right now. But like 10 years from now, like that's going to be like remembering like Zach Reuter is like wide receiver 3 in 2015, like or 2018, I think. Like I don't know.
You don't even remember.
Yeah, a few days ago, I went down a rabbit hole of like 2015 to last year, who was wide receiver 4 for K State in all of those seasons. And I can't remember most of them right now off the top of my head, if that tells you anything.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good indicator of the quality. But the next room is the offensive line room, where it really is the tale of two sides because center and to the left, pretty well established and generally considered to be really good. John Pastore was an all Big 12 pick or a preseason all Big 12 pick at left tackle. Tanner Morley is transferring in from Colorado State, has been getting a lot of buzz. So is Delvin Morris, who's probably going to be the center this year. Then you get to the right side, no one really knows what's going on, where right guard is probably going to be between Dylan Villarreal, I wish it was Navarro Shunky, my king, but he might be still another year off. Could be Tyler Johnson. The right guard spot is a question mark, and right tackle is a question mark between two people, that being George Fitzpatrick and Gus Hawkins. It would not surprise me if, like, the first 3 or 4 games of the season, you legitimately get an even split of right tackle snaps between both of them just to see who breaks away. And I would suggest moving one of them into guard again, but you run they're too damn tall. Like if you were taller than 6'4", I'm sorry, you should be disqualified from playing guard, and you should be double disqualified from playing center because you're going to get binked like once a game if you were over 6'6" tall. But I'm curious to hear your overall thoughts about the offensive line because I think that is like the one position group that you and I outside of the show have not talked extensively about. And I think it's just because we take the left side for granted and have no idea what's going on the right.
I think you put it really well. Like left tackle is like I mean, other than quarterback, probably the most like set in stone position on the team. I guess maybe like defensive end one with Wendell Gregory, but like yeah, like John Pastore was second team All Big 12 last season, and that was for a not very good offensive line. I mean, it was John Pastore, Sam Hecht, and Prayer for the most part. Like, and I like John Pastore is gonna like take that job again, and I'm not worried about it. Tanner Morley is transferring in from Colorado State. I think he'll probably be the left guard, and then yeah, at center. From how Mike Schmidt talked in this offseason, kind of sounds like it's going to be Delvin Morris, but it might be Dylan Villarreal. I'm okay with either of those guys. But then, yeah, the questions are on the right tackle side or on the right side of the line. Guard, I mean, you're looking at right guard, Dylan Villarreal. You're looking at Keaton Jones. You're looking at Charlie Adams from Cal Poly. And I think it could be any of those 3 in the first game. And then like I think they can all be decent options. At right tackle, you have almost kind of the opposite problem where you have guys that could be good options, but it's kind of a question mark on who's going to be healthy. George Fitzpatrick, I think maybe has, if assuming 100% health, might be the inside track to be the starting right tackle. Gus Hawkins, I think, is kind of the same thing there. And then there's a transfer from, I believe, Auburn, Tyler Johnson.
Yep, from Auburn. You're correct.
And so I think it could be any of those three guys, and it may be Tyler Johnson to start the season because there's I think a solid chance that George Fitzpatrick and Gus Hawkins aren't going to be ready. Because Gus, I think he tore his ACL or tore something in his knee, and George Fitzpatrick has been getting back in shape from missing all of last season. So those are big question marks. So it's kind of weird to have just one side of the line, so at least from our perspective, set in stone. And then the other side, or just the two other spots, really big question marks, I think. But right tackle is, I think, the biggest area of concern right now, because right guard, I think we have guys that can play the position. It's just not entirely clear who's going to do it.
Yeah. Gun to your head, assuming everyone is healthy, who is starting at right tackle?
Game one, I think it'll be Tyler Johnson, because I'm not convinced it's going to be Gus Hawkins or George Fitzpatrick. Oh, but assuming everybody's healthy. Sorry, I totally went off base question there. Assuming everyone's healthy, I think it's George Fitzpatrick.
Okay. I think that's fair. But now we get to move to the other side of the ball, starting with the defensive end room, where with all of the transfers in, this is the one I think is more understandable to be concerned about depth. This is the entire defensive line room, not just defensive end. Because right now it's one amazing piece in Wendell Gregory, who's probably going to be on the inside track for an all Big 12 team this year. Jordan Allen, who's been fine. And then Elijah Hill is a pass rushing specialist. And then you have not a whole lot. You have true freshman Tucker Ashford. You have Travis Bates, who's not a defensive end. Jaden Bryant, who's coming in from Coastal Carolina, Dalton Knapp, Brad Stanier, and then walk-on in Jackson Holly. So you have one amazing name, Wendell Gregory. One commodity that you know is at least going to be okay in Jordan Allen. One massive question mark in a pass rush specialist for Elijah Hill, and then just kind of pray that none of them get hurt, or if any of them need to take a little breather on the sideline, that the other guys behind them can kind of dig in their heels. I have no idea who's going to be on the 2 line behind Allen or Wendell. No idea.
I am right there with you in lockstep. Because, Wendell Gregory, you're looking at him and you're thinking, definitely inside track for first team all Big 12. I think he might even have inside track for Big 12 defensive lineman of the year. If he is able to convert more of his pressures into sacks, which I'm hopeful that he can, because the strongest part of this defense, top to bottom, is going to be the secondary, I think. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we're covering guys for longer, that's going to give Wendell Gregory way more opportunities to go from pressures to sacks. So that's what I'm hoping for there. The other side, I think it's going to be Jordan Allen and then Elijah Hill for pass rush situations. And for what it's worth, Elijah Hill put on, I think, 25 pounds this offseason. He's up to 245. He's still 6'1", and that can't be changed. I'm really sorry, man. But 245 is a major, major improvement. Is way more than I expected, honestly, for year one. I was thinking he might play this year in the 230s, and he well exceeded my expectations there. So maybe he has a little bit more versatility, but I imagine Jordan Allen's still going to be playing the majority of the regular down and distance snaps. But outside of that, it's really dealer's choice on whoever is going to be next up. For me, I'm thinking Travis Bates. He's not listed as a defensive end anymore, but I think
no, he is listed as a defensive end.
Okay, I guess I don't
know why.
I was going to say, because I'm pretty sure he's going to be playing a lot of 3-tech defensive tackle this year, but I bet there's going to be some situations where we kick him out to defensive end here and there, and maybe just bring in a large human being to put in his place. But and then Dalton Knapp, he is somebody that I remember last season. There was actually a little bit of scuttle that he might get some run in the Sunflower Showdown last year, because I think there were a couple defensive ends out that game, and he was gonna play. I think if like anyone else went out, but he didn't end up needing to play. But I guess he made some strides, and so he's somebody that could potentially be someone to watch for as a guy to get some snaps here and there. But yeah, outside of that, I'm not really sure what to expect. Tucker Ashford, if he's ready, which I'd be very happy about, but I remain unconvinced. Jaden Bryant, I'm not convinced is ready yet. And Brad Stanier, I think it's more likely we see him play 3-tech than play defensive end, unless we need a jumbo run stopper, which that might be his role, because, I mean, he's like 6'5", 280.
Yeah. So very, very top-heavy room, a room that I think will be great on pass rush situations, but I question the run defense. And a somewhat similar story when it comes to the defensive tackle room, because your one line is probably going to be Kamari Burns, almost certainly, as the number one defensive tackle. Everyone else is fighting for any snaps available. Austin Ramsey might be defensive tackle too. Everyone else is either really young, not ready, or a massive question mark. Like De'Arian Hicks, to me, is if there's a linchpin on the defensive line that, if he's really good, I'll feel a lot better, is De'Arian Hicks. But again, the depth at defensive tackle is just quite simply not ready, because your options for depth, assuming Kamari Burns and Austin Ramsey are the starters rather, are Patrick Tackey, who has played, I think, total of 3 snaps, and then 3 true freshmen and Holden Bass. That's it.
Yeah, I'm definitely worried about the defensive tackle spot. Kamari Burns, I think, is somebody that maybe by the end of the year we're looking at and thinking that he could be an all Big 12 guy. But outside of that, I'm really not sure where the production is going to come from, because it's all question marks. Now, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but like anything outside of Kamari Burns being good, it's going to be a welcome surprise. Travis Bates, I honestly think, is more likely to start at 3-tech in the second defensive tackle than Austin Ramsey at this point. Like, just by virtue of experience, Austin Ramsey, the first year of college football, he wasn't even a defensive tackle. He was an offensive lineman. Like, he transferred in from Kentucky. He dropped a ton of weight. Like, he got here at, I think, like 350, and he's down to 309. So I'm hopeful that Austin Ramsey can produce, but it may be something that takes a few weeks to kind of get him acclimated. Then, De'Arian Hicks, I'm really hopeful that he's someone that can break out and be an X factor, because if he is, there's still not enough depth, but that would at least take it from being like an existential crisis and like complete ceiling limiter of this team to, like, at the very least not being an active detriment and like one snap away from the season being over constantly. And then, other than that, you're looking at Patrick Tackey, Holden Bass, Brad Stanier sliding down and playing some snaps. Like, it's just lots of question marks from there.
I like that you word it like that, because I truly believe that, yes, they are one injury away from an existential crisis. And this team, perhaps more than any other, could use a Timmy Horn. Which, granted, every team could use a Timmy Horn, perhaps one of the most underrated. Okay. Complete aside, James Gilbert or Timmy Horn for most underrated player of the last, of the Klein era up to now.
Ooh, Gosh, that's a tough one. Actually, I was about to say both of their names at different points after you said it, but I'm gonna go James Gilbert. I think just because especially given the context of I mean, there was no one in that running back room. It was like James Gilbert and Jordan Brown or nothing. But I think James Gilbert could have been okay on his own, but I don't think Jordan Brown would have been okay on his own. So we needed James Gilbert in a bad way.
Yeah. So you're going to give it to Gilbert. I think I would agree. But yeah, defensive tackle room, I think, is one injury away from absolute abject disaster. But then we can move on to the linebacking room, which this is going to be, again, a story of two people. Well, two people at middle linebacker, and then, yeah, shrug your shoulders, who knows where else. And that's Mekhi Mason coming in from Louisiana Tech, who is just an absolute tackle demon at Louisiana Tech. And then the other person getting the most amount of buzz is Darian Whitaker. And the downside, they play the same position. They both play middle linebacker. And the outside linebackers are going to be your Asa Newsome, Gabe Powers, Rex Van Wy. Okay, well, you get 3 games of Asa Newsome before his kneecap explodes. But yeah, this is going to be the Mekhi Mason show with, depending on Darian Whitaker, if he can play elsewhere. But it's entirely possible if they run a true 4-2, you can have 2 middle linebackers on the field at the same time. That's a legitimate strategy in a true 4-2.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that part of this season is going to be finding ways to get Darian Whitaker on the field, because I think he was going to be someone that was going to play last season, linebacker, before being injured, and he got in a bit, I think, as a special teams guy later. But yeah, he would have been a huge help. And this year, it would be, if he can give us snaps at an outside linebacker spot, or just like a kind of Mike, I guess. I don't know. And honestly, if the interior D line is that bad, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to run 2 Mikes on the field, just guys that can fill the middle. But yeah, Mekhi Mason, I'm hoping for a big season from him. I really liked his tape. He was one of my favorite transfers. And Darian Whitaker, I'm super high on. Rex Van Wy, super experienced. Gabe Powers, I think he could be someone that steps up. And Asa Newsome is maybe the player I most want on this team, other than maybe Joe Jackson, to have a good season. I really want Joe Jackson to be able to prove the doubters wrong and have a great season start to finish. And I really want Asa Newsome to have a season start to finish.
Yeah, I just want him to finish a season. He could be aggressively okay, and I will still be unbelievably happy for him, because he has died every one of the last 3 seasons because his knees keep exploding.
Yeah, it is unfair to him, because he is somebody that I really, really, really liked out of high school, and it has just been a rough go with things. One thing I'm going to note on Darian Whitaker that's interesting is if you go to his Twitter account, his Twitter bio, he lists himself as a defensive end. So maybe we're Toby Osunsanmiing him.
Oh, God. Either that or he hasn't updated it in quite some time. That's what I'm going to choose to believe.
Maybe. That might be it. But
that doesn't make sense, because we didn't recruit him as a D end.
No, we did not. He has always been a linebacker, so we may be finding a way for him to work as an edge rusher or something. I'm not really sure. Just to find a way to get him on the field, because he is one of those guys that is that athletic. You got to find a way to get him there. And he's also 246. He's Elijah Hill plus 2 inches taller.
Biscuit. Yeah, a biscuit.
Yeah. So I'd be all right. Giving him some snaps there and just seeing what happens early in the season. If we're not going to be able to get him to play Mike, and if he can't play Will, then okay, yeah, let's give that a shot and see if it'll work.
Yeah. Everyone else is more or less depth. DJ Ackerson's too young. Plus, God, he needs to put on weight. Ashmore, Jacoby Oliphant Jr. used to be a corner, so maybe he'll be like a third down specialist. Weston Polk, Sawyer Shoki's too young, and that's your long snapper. That's your linebacking room. But corner is by far the deepest room on the team, and you have a definitive 1 and 2, and that's going to be Donovan McIntosh and Zayshawn Rich. I am going to go ahead and call the race here. It's not my race to call, but I'm going to go ahead and succession this and call the race for Donovan McIntosh as CB2. Caleb Patterson will be the rotational guy, but I mean, even then, this is like, I think the defense. No, that's not true. Safeties exist. This is the second room that I think could eat an injury or two. Specifically, if Donnie gets hurt, I think that Caleb Patterson and
probably JoJo Scott. Honestly.
Probably JoJo Scott would step it. Maybe Stinyard. Depends on I guess Damian Miller, but he's probably nickel. But
anyway, I would like to say I think he's a nickel.
Yeah, but for those are the outside corners. Your nickels going to be Michael Graham Jr. or MJ Graham. Nick McClellan might be another nickel, and I know Jason Prevard is going to be, or Prevard rather, not Prevard. I've been pronouncing that wrong. I know that he's going to be a nickel. I think he's technically listed at safety, but him and Michael Graham are going to be the nickel corners. But I'm really high on the cornerback room plus the nickels just because I think Zayshawn Rich has a good chance of being an all Big 12 pick. I think Donovan McIntosh gets dumpstered on for his first couple of games where he was admittedly pretty rough, but he was good. Like, he was legitimately really good down the stretch. Plus, he has freakishly long arms, which if Jordan Peterson plays how I think Jordan Peterson is going to want to play his defense, those long arms are just going to basically envelop receivers to disrupt timing on either press man or press zone. So outside corner, I feel fine. Nickel, I feel fine. I feel good about the cornerback room. It's not the room I feel best about on defense. That's next. But I think that this corner room has 2 NFL draft picks and a bunch of NFL draft looks right now.
Yeah, I really agree with most of what you said. Zayshawn Rich, I think, is cornerback 1. Donovan McIntosh is cornerback 2. And I am totally fine with that. I think those are both quality Big 12 corners, especially Zayshawn. He's someone I think that, I think there's a risk that he's going to go to the NFL if he has a good season. So, and that's what you want. But yeah, I'm hopeful on that. And then, after that, I think, it might be Caleb Patterson. I wasn't super high on him out of the portal, but I'm okay with him as a number 3 corner, especially because we're really doing a true nickel situation. So I'm okay with that. And then, JoJo Scott, Martell Jackson, and Sirius Stinyard, kind of that trio of corners we picked up that were true freshmen last year. And I think all of those guys are going to find themselves kind of duking it out for like the last corner spot. And I'm really I'm comfortable with our starters. I'm fine with Caleb Patterson being CB3. And then after that, I think one of those 3 young guys is going to be good enough to get some snaps here and there, and hopefully more. But I'm not overly worried about the cornerback room.
Do you have any thoughts on the nickels?
Yeah, nickels. It seems like recently the big debate has been: are you a team MJ Graham or team Jason Prevard? Yeah, because I just looked. It's Jason, so it's an emphasis on the second syllable in the pronunciation guide. But Jason Prevard. I've been team Prevard. I think he's going to be the number one nickel, but I think MJ Graham, from what it sounds like from the offseason, he's going to be too good to keep off the field. So I imagine we'll see maybe a bit of rotation at nickel, maybe even some shuffling between positions depending on the situation. So I'm curious to see what they're able to do to get those guys on there. And then other than that, Damian Miller, I think is probably going to be a nickel, and then probably going to be looking at one of the other safeties. I think. Other than that, like Dominic Mitchell, maybe. Like he might be like kind of like a fourth option. I don't know why you'd want to go 4 deep at nickel, but I guess
that'd be kind of crazy. The other defensive back room is the safeties room, and this is the one that I feel best about on this entire defense. Because to me, you have a top 4 on, not counting just Jason Prevard. Oh God, names. But as I consider him to be more of a nickel, but if you want to count him, you're 5 deep. Where I think you can feel comfortable with any combination of Logan Bartley, Coy Beasley, Wesley Fair, and Adrian Maddox on the field. I think Adrian Maddox and Coy Beasley might be your like 1 and 2. But even then, I think that it's more likely that Adrian Maddox and Logan Bartley are an or for strong safety than it is that one is particularly dominant over the other. And maybe you get 3 safety packages. But I feel really confident about this safety room because I think Coy Beasley is really, really damn good. There's been a lot of excitement about Adrian Maddox. I think Logan Bartley is really, really good. And Wesley Fair, say what you will about him, while he's not he's not a world beater, he's fine. He's all right. As if he's your 4th safety, you have a really good safety room.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, it's going to be Adrian Maddox and Logan Bartley are your top 2 safeties in that room. Then Coy Beasley, I think, is your 3rd guy. Then, Wesley Fair's 4. After that, it's going to be like Jack Fabris and Dominic Mitchell, I think. And I like Coy Beasley. Is an interesting case because he was really didn't play at all at Purdue, and then transferred and broke through a pretty big way. I think at Ball State, Miami, Ohio, Red Mac team. Then Bartley, I think that was a big coup and probably one of the most underrated recruiting wins was getting Logan Bartley to stick around, I think, with the new staff. Because I think he is going to play a big role in the defense this year. And Adrian Maddox, that was a kind of unheralded pickup, I think, at the time, just because he didn't play a ton last year for Georgia. It's because he voluntarily redshirted, and he's supposedly been awesome this offseason. And he might be the next in a pretty significant line of excellent grad transfer / 5th year K-State transfer safeties that put up all Big 12 seasons. So I'm really looking forward to these guys, especially I think those top 2 guys, Adrian Maddox and Logan Bartley. I think both of those guys are going to be enforcers for the defense.
Yep. In terms of special teams, we don't know. I think Luis Rodriguez is going to be the field goal kicker. Robert Hammond's probably the kickoff guy. Dylan Davidson and Simon McLean are fighting for punting duties. There are so many damn names that could be a kick or punt returner. It's a waste of time to even go through it because we'd be here for 45 minutes more. And this is already going to be an hour and a half, 45-minute episode.
Fingers crossed for Max Lovett on at least one of the return units.
Yeah, that's my hope as well. But now we can get in to the schedule after talking about the roster for an hour. Non-con shouldn't be an issue. You have Nichols, who's a bad FCS team. They might be the worst FCS team that we have put on the schedule, at least during the duration of the show. UT Martin is fighting them for it. But Wazoo, just had their coach taken away from them, and they were a 6-6 team last year, who, granted, for like a half was giving Ole Miss all they could handle, which worrisome. But I don't think Wazoo will be unbeatable. I think they will. It's one of those games that should probably be like 2-3 scores for K-State. Tulane, I think, might be one of the biggest regression candidates in the country, just because they lost John Summerall and promoted their passing game coordinator, who ran Southern Miss into the ground. So, absent any objection, I'm just going to move on to the conference games after like giving you a little bit of time to talk about the non-con, because I don't think that any of the non-con games are notable.
The only notable thing about any of them, I think, is that Nichols is the same team that we started the Chris Kleiman era with.
Yep.
So I just think that's kind of a funny twist of irony that we're doing the same thing that we did back in 2019.
To quote George Lucas, it's like poetry. It rhymes. The conference games, we start off on the road at Cincinnati, who I think will be embroiled in kind of their own recovery of controversy in the offseason. Plus, they're coached by Scott Satterfield, which, granted, early season Scott Satterfield is a very different animal than late to mid-season Scott Satterfield. So that's that, and it being an away game with a young team. This will be Colin Klein's first away game as a head coach, plus it's a conference opener. So maybe you get a decent enough environment. I still think that this is one that K-State can walk away victorious in. In fact, that would probably be my prediction. But again, away road games, weirder stuff has happened.
Yeah, I'm not to the point where I want to pencil that in as a win, because I think we could very easily get surprised in that game. But that is a game I think we should be able to win, because, yeah, I really just don't have much respect for Scott Satterfield as a coach. But like you said, early season Cincinnati, anything could happen.
Yeah. Then you have easily the game of the year. I don't think it will be particularly close, and that's K-State up against Houston in Manhattan, Kansas. Hopefully getting revenge for the game that completely screwed the Avery Johnson sophomore season 2 years ago. This is the game, to me, that will be the most indicative of what the team is. If the team is able to win this game, I will feel very comfortable predicting like a 10-2 or 11-1 campaign, just because Willie Fritz terrifies me, and I think that this Houston team is going to go to the Big 12 championship game. And that's despite the fact that Houston has like the hardest schedule in terms of Big 12 competition this year. But if you lose this game, you sort of regress back to, it's a first-year head coach. You just do what you can. You try to aim for your 8-4, and you just see what you can build on for this year. This is the most important game on the schedule if you're looking at the totality of the season. Now, of course, KU's the week after. We can talk about that later. But I are you with me in saying that the Houston game is the most important? Or because I've met people that don't say it's Houston. I've met people that say it's Arizona State. I've seen people say Cincy. There's no other game that even comes close to Houston for me. I barely entertain arguments to the contrary.
I think it's the biggest game of the year. For what it's worth, on Bosco's Boys, I did not say it was the Pendulum game. I actually think the Pendulum game is the next game on the schedule, Sunflower Showdown. And I want to talk about it when we get to it. But Houston, yeah, I think it's the biggest game on the schedule. Because, yeah, I agree with you. If you win that game, you are setting yourself up to be in the Big 12 championship contention up until the final week of the season. And at that point, you're looking at controlling your destiny at that point. It's still going to be only October 10th, I think, October 10th. So, question marks. But if you're coming off a bye week, I know for Coach Kleiman, there seemed to be a curse with bye weeks. At least it seemed that way. But Bill Snyder seemed to pretty consistently as a coach be excellent on the bye weeks. So uh, pick your poison, I guess. Like which Colin Klein mentor are we going to get for the Houston game? So I'm curious how that's going to go. But yeah, I think this team can beat Houston. I don't think it's an unbeatable Houston team on paper. Willie Fritz definitely gives me pause, but this is a very good Houston team, but it's not an invincible Houston team.
No. I think that you mentioned that the pendulum game being Sunflower Showdown, KU in Manhattan the next week. I think that this has a potential to be a really bad KU team. With Cole Ballard as their starting quarterback, the fact that he's seemingly on the inside track and it's not their 4-star, Isaiah Marshall, I think is his name. I think they have the potential to be like stinky of the year contenders right next to Iowa State. Unfortunately, we play Iowa State in Ames to spoil it at the end of the season, but I don't think KU will be very good. But I mean, if there's one game they're going to wake up for, it's going to be this one.
Yeah, the reason I picked KU as like the pendulum game of the season was because, for one thing, it's the middle game of a series of 3 really tough games. I think because Arizona State on the road will be tough, and then put your rival in there in the middle. You're looking at either like a trap game sandwich with KU, like between a big game in Houston and a big game in Arizona State. Not that you need a reason to get up for KU game, but I think you also look at Houston. If you win that game, that's going to be probably an emotional game because Houston's probably going to be ranked. Then if you beat KU, that's an emotional game because they're your rival. That I think has implications well beyond the game in terms of like how well are we going to maintain energy after back-to-back weeks with potentially emotionally charged games, and then going on the road to what I expect will at least be a decent team in Arizona State. Like I like the response out of the KU game and the like how healthy we can stay from the KU game, like will dictate the rest of the season in my mind. Like Houston gives us the ability to like take our ceiling and floor like way up for the season. On the flip side, the KU game gives us the ability to either maintain it or potentially lower it just the week after. So that's why I see KU as the pendulum game, is because we will be facing a team that likely is not going to have much to lose. And I do not like facing Andy Kotelnicki offenses with nothing to lose.
No, I don't. But you mentioned Arizona State being next up. They have quarterback questions, but are coached by Kenny Dillingham, which will always make them a threat. That's really all I have to say about them before you go into Colorado. But we can kind of cover those 2 games together because they're both Mountain West / desert. Well, screw it. We'll call it the Mountain West region of the season, where Colorado could be stinky as well. It depends on how much Brennan Marion is able to like kind of alter the offense, since he's their new offensive coordinator, which surprised the hell out of me because Sac State moved up to FBS and he said, nope, back to an offensive coordinating job. But yeah, Arizona State worries me just because away game, Kenny Dillingham, probably going to be a good environment just because of what Kenny Dillingham has been able to do for the Arizona State program. Colorado,
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm worried about Arizona State, not just for the team, but also for the reasons I previously said, for effects outside of that game. But then also, yeah, Colorado, I'm a bit worried about as well. I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to be a good team. Like, I think Colorado's non-conference is going to have a lot to determine if this is going to be a game to worry about or not. Because if they do well in non-conference, and like a healthy Coach Prime actually helps this team, then yeah, this could potentially be a pesky to good Colorado team. If they kind of come out of the gates slow, there is a chance they may have an interim coach by this game. And
is there a chance it's Brennan Marion?
Yeah, like, and so that could make things like even more difficult because Brennan Marion, I think, could be a good coach. Like he's at least like had success as an offensive coordinator, but it also like the team might quit. It's tough to say. Like Coach Prime might be the glue that holds it all together, or like maybe like the change is what they need, and they'll get the interim coach bump. But there's a lot of question marks, I think, around that game.
Yeah. Then you get Oklahoma State, which will be fascinating just to see the battle of the two new head coaches, especially with how often they've been pit up against one another in sort of the offseason metrics. I am of the maybe this is me putting on my hater goggles. I don't hate Eric Morris, actually. I think he'll probably work out at Oklahoma State, and I hope he does because I like Oklahoma State. Do not pull a Texas Tech, I swear to God. Because the last time I said that, I was like, yeah, I like Texas Tech. They turned into the Techla so I really don't want to have I don't even know, the Qatar boys. I don't know. I hope Eric Morris works out, but he's someone that's always taken time to build up a program. So I think Oklahoma State's probably bowl eligible this year, but I think that just by virtue of who was hired at the same time, these two careers are always going to be linked together. And, the first game is going to set up a narrative no matter what. It's like, can Colin Klein beat Eric Morris, or can Eric Morris beat Colin Klein? It's been one game. Let's relax. But that's how narratives form.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this Oklahoma State team, like, because it's North Texas and Orange, like, for the most part, and I think they could be good. I think they could fall on their faces. I'm really not sure. Like, they're getting a lot of love this offseason. I think a little too much for all the question marks around the team. Like, I know North Texas was really good last year, but we'll have to see if it'll translate, and it may. Like, it depends on how good of a coach Eric Morris is, and it's going to depend as well on that all the players at all the levels can translate. But I mean, I think on paper this should be a winnable game for K-State. It seems like for the most part, K-State and Oklahoma State have just been beating the other at home, like, for the last several years. So that might be what we continue to see. But yeah, like we're going to know a lot more about these teams come time for the game, because this is going to be early November. But yeah, right now though, I really am not sure what I think on Oklahoma State, other than I think they're getting a little too much hype, but I don't think they're going to be bad.
Yeah. Then you have TCU, who I think will be another like 8-4 TCU team, so they're going to be fine. So this will probably end up being a coin flip. Credit to Sonny Dykes, as much as he kind of is an asshole. He has coached TCU to not only a national title, but pretty consistently being like 8-4. I think he's been 8-4 every single other season that he's been at TCU.
I think you might be right. I think they might have been sub 500 that first year after the title. Maybe, I can't remember though, but I'm hoping that we can beat TCU. But honestly, I'm looking at this schedule and I'm like, this is one of the most likely losses on the schedule, I think.
Yeah. I think it's this and Arizona. Well, Houston, this and Arizona State are probably the most likely losses to me.
I am in total agreement with you on that. So yeah, this TCU game has me a little worried, especially late in the season. I've not had great luck in Fort Worth recently. And yeah, I don't love Sonny Dykes really, but like, he's typically been able to put together like a solid TCU team. Like, it seems like most of the time he has overachieved, especially year one. But I think I don't love Josh Hoover. I think he had a lot of empty stats But they were still able to use him and get to like at least okay seasons. So
Well, so throwing him under the bus after he left was crazy. That's bonkers to me.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Like, I'm not saying he's wrong.
I'm not saying he's incorrect. I do think that like he made Josh Hoover sound like he was buns. I don't think Josh Hoover is buns. I think he's okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I think Josh Hoover is overrated. But I don't know why he would do that as a head coach unless Josh Hoover is just like texting you like mean like insults at like 2 a.m. every night and you just get tired of it. But I don't know. Just you gotta let that stuff go.
And the last two games are the battle for the scratching post between K-State and Arizona, and then Iowa State, Farmageddon. I think Iowa State will probably – I'm not going to go as far as Mason Voth, or maybe it was Drew. It was one of the KSO boys said that they think that Iowa State might be the worst team in Power 4 this year. I'm not going to go that far. They're going to be close, though.
Yeah, I think this will be a rough season for the Cyclones. For as much as I hated Matt Campbell, the main reason for it was that he made Iowa State conscious, and they didn't deserve it. And I'm thinking that hopefully this will remind Iowa State fans that Matt Campbell was the only good coach that they've ever had in football. And they've really, outside of like 1 year of Seneca Wallace, a year in which Bobby Walker got back-to-back pick sixes off of him at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I guess it was KSU Stadium back then, like 2002. But yeah, I think that this may be a reversion back to where they've been. I hope it is, but regardless, I'm still going to worry about playing them on their senior day. They're still like going to hate us, and I'm a bit worried that about injuries, about depth, just about how things are going to be at that point in the season. But yeah, quality of team, I'm not particularly worried about Iowa State, but like that late in the season, there's other factors to worry about as well.
Yep. So now we've gone over the entire schedule. Arizona, Noah Fafita. That's Noah Fafita and an unholy amount of blitzes. That's Arizona.
Yeah, I still don't believe in Brent Brennan, but he could prove me wrong this year.
But looking at the schedule, oh God, now I have to try and wait a minute. I don't care. I was about to say like Scott will get mad at me if I predict a different record, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is my show. I can do what I want. I go back and forth on this season, and it's because of a lack of information. Every year with Chris Kleiman, outside of the COVID season and a season where he like quite clearly was done by about 3/4 of the way through the season, you could always count on at least like 7-5, 8-4. I think 8-4 was like in a normal season the Kleiman floor. I think that's probably Klein's floor. The question is, does it go up? Especially given the light schedule. If we had last year's schedule, that'd be perhaps the most confident 8-4 I could ever give you. But we don't get Texas Tech. We don't have BYU. We don't have Utah. We do have Houston. But, I mean, I will slingshot back and forth between the offensive talent on this team is too good to go like 8-4, 7-5. And then I'll be like, well, the defense has so many questions, and we are one injury away from catastrophe at like 3 different positions. So that'll make me think it's 8-4. But going through the schedule, I think we go through the non-con unscathed. Don't worry, you can go through game by game afterwards as well. This is also your show, so you get executive privilege. I think we beat Cincinnati. I am unfortunately predicting a loss to Houston just because I think Willie Fritz is that good. KU, I think we beat. Arizona State is another one I think we drop. Then we go on a little winning streak up against Colorado and Oklahoma State. And then I think we drop one of three, or maybe even two of three, of TCU, Arizona. Okay, I don't think we lose to Iowa State. So I keep sitting between like 9-3, 8-4. I think that we're going to end up in a situation where we probably win one we shouldn't. Maybe we beat Houston, but in exchange, because the football gods are cruel, we drop one against someone we have no business losing against. So I'm going to go with like maybe the world's most exciting 8-4, because you at least have the excitement of a new head coach establishing a floor, being a K-State legend, and getting to see a record-setting performance inevitably from Avery. Well, I guess I shouldn't say inevitably, but almost certainly from Avery Johnson setting the career passing touchdowns record. But I'm going to sit at 8-4. But again, it depends on what day that you catch me. If I have a good day, I could, like 10-2. 10-2, maybe we get tie-breaking or get a tie-break out of Arlington. But 8-4 is what my brain tells me.
I'm not listening to my brain.
I understand.
I think this team is going 10-2. I similarly to you. I have been going back and forth on how I feel about this team, because there's a lot of reasons to be excited, but there's also so many limiting factors. I'm thinking about all the transfers in that we have, how like a not insignificant chunk of them were not highly productive at their prior stops. So a lot of them were hoping for a step up in development. Then we're also hoping for this whole new coaching staff and whole new team to gel in one off season. We're also chiefly we're hoping that a first-time head coach is going to be able to get things figured out immediately. And really, the main reason that I'm just going to go into this season with blind optimism is that as a player, Colin Klein did way more than I think I had ever thought possible for K-State in my lifetime. Like he just every single play, I was not even worried. Yeah, he's going to run QB power and get 4 yards, and we're just going to keep doing that, and it's going to work. There was a certain inevitability about Colin Klein that you don't often see in athletes. I mean, there's athletes where, they're just smooth and you can tell that they're really, really good. Like Keontae Johnson for K-State basketball. But Colin Klein had an inevitability factor, which is a different thing to me. It's yeah, they're not playing with the smooth finishing ability of Keontae Johnson, but when they have the ball in their hands, they just make things happen. And I have a feeling Colin Klein is going to be the same as a coach. I'm absolutely putting my heart on the line here, as I have done literally every year of my entire life as a K-State fan, and mostly not been repaid for it. But if anything, I am a fanatic. So I think K-State goes 10-2. I think they beat Houston. I think they lose to Arizona State and TCU on the road. I think those are their 2 losses this season. I think they sweep through non-conference play, no problem. I think then, yeah, they're not going to take their first loss on the schedule until Arizona State, and that'll be October 24th. Then they'll lose November 14th to TCU, I think, and then they'll beat Arizona and Iowa State. Yeah, I think is how they'll finish the year. But yeah, I think that Houston game, I think they win it. That KU game, I think they win it too. And I think that they'll be just utterly emotionally exhausted by the time they get to the Arizona State game. And I think they'll drop that one by 3. And I think it's just going to haunt them in the back of their minds in a what could have been sort of way. And then, yeah, I think they'll drop TCU later, just because I feel like that's going to be a tough game.
Yeah. So, well, I'm very excited for this season. I plan on being at every single of the home games. I missed 2 last year. I missed the North Dakota game. I'm not sad about that one. And I missed the Texas Tech game. Not sad about that one either. But I plan on being on every single one of the K-State home games this year. And I'm just so excited to get that feeling back of excitement because we haven't really had it since halfway through 2 years ago, like basically before the Arizona State game, where ever since then, it just felt like the winds were taken out of the sails. And it felt like the season was DOA in terms of fan excitement just because of Ireland last year. But this year, at the very least, has a lot of energy attached to it, and it has a lot of exciting pieces. To me, I've made this comparison before, but it's like that K-State baseball team of 2 years ago. Don't look at what happened this last year. That's not important. Of 2 years ago, we were like, yeah, they're a young team, but they may be really exciting. Like they're, if nothing else, they're going to be exciting. And they were, and they ended up making a run to the postseason. I think that this team will be very similar, except for instead of players, it's going to be coaches, where it's going to be a lot of the coaches getting to know each other. It's going to be Colin Klein is going to make head coaching mistakes this season in the same way that every head coach does, but especially first-year head coaches. And that's not me saying that, every head coach of the past decade at K-State has been flawless. Famously, Bill Snyder would just incinerate timeouts within the first 3 minutes of the first quarter of every game. Even he wasn't flawless. No one is. But I do think that there will be times that, first-year head coach is going to have a first-year head coach moment. And that's okay. Everyone is growing. It's just a matter of, do you let those mistakes cloud the rest of the season? Like, do you make a mistake so bad that it burns the rest of the season? I don't think Colin Klein, I think he's capable of it. I don't think he will let it happen because I think anyone is technically capable of making a mistake that incinerates the season. But I think Colin Klein has an advantage that Chris Kleiman didn't, and that is he can right the ship himself. Kleiman was very much and this is not making a judgment call on which is a better style. I think both have merit. But Colin Klein can right the ship by himself if he needs to. He can tell his players, okay, trust me as a coach, get on my back. I can lead us through this. That's probably going to be his leadership style. So through good and bad, I think that this season will at minimum be fun. I think even the losses, like you won't have the Arizona game last year, the game that God forgot. But I'll let you get the last words here on the overall feelings going into the season.
It feels just insane to think, like, if I were to go back in time, like to like the 2012 season, which was like the most incredible experience ever. Like as a K-State fan, like that whole year with football, basketball, and baseball all winning the Big 12. To think about going back and telling like 13-year-old me that Colin Klein is going to be the head coach. I wish I could say I knew how good he was going to be, but I said this on Bosco's Boys, so I'll say it here too, just to hedge my bets. Every team's favorite coach is the coach that hasn't coached a game. And that's what Colin Klein is. And it's enhanced by the fact that it's a prodigal son returning home situation. So the chance for heartbreak is immense here. Like things could go very bad. They certainly could. But at least we have experience with him as an offensive coordinator. We know that he was excellent in that role. And he's gotten instruction from some of the best coaches to coach football ever, really. Bill Snyder, Chris Kleiman, legends in their own right. Mike Elko, if he plays his cards right, he might find himself in that conversation too, because he's got a good situation going. But yeah, I this year especially, it's going to be the Colin Klein year because it really was the shot in the arm of adrenaline that the fan base really needed, I think, because I think if this football season goes well, it could, rising tide lifts all boats, I think. Like, I think that could be good just department-wide, university-wide for K-State. But I think especially the football program really needed energy. And having Colin Klein return to be the head coach, like, it's a no-brainer. So now all we can do is just hope it works out. And I think it will. That's not a guarantee, but I think it will. And I think that we could even start winning sooner rather than later.
Yeah. To quote the greatest coach of our time, he didn't come here to rebuild. He came here to elevate. Hopefully it ends better than the last time someone said that.
To quote the greatest coach of all time, dudes.
Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed sharing our excitement for this upcoming football season, and thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're aggievillealleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I am at Connor Baltzor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store. Link found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.